There's nothing.
Good morning, this is the Eager Beaver Show.
You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. PsychicTarot.ca, book your tarot reading and unlock your spiritual journey. And the Pepper Master, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. Well, good morning and hello, kids and cubs. Whew, all right, I think I got it. I hope we're all together. And welcome to season 4 and episode number 624 of the Daily Beaver Morning Show. 100% Canadian. Today, recording day is Monday. I don't remember the day, actually, April 14th. There we go, 2025. And it looks like it's going to be a lovely day here at the Beaver Lodge. There's a little bit of light, fluffy cloud here in the sky, but enough blue to let one hope that the sun will shine through today. I am your host, the Eager Beaver, pronouns he, him, hey, Mr. Beaver A. And not with me, as always, is my good friend, Mr. Grizzly. Unfortunately, Mr. Grizzly did not have a very good night's sleep and was nice enough to set up the studio so that we could come in and do the show, but absolutely had to go to bed. Unfortunately for me, however, because, of course, I'm always new here when it comes to production. Now that we're doing it on the Mac and no longer doing it on the phone, all the buttons were in different places. And, well, rather than not sticking the landing, I didn't. The dismount I might be able to do, but yeah, I started the routine tripping over my feet. So, but hey, you're here and I'm here and we're here, so we're going to have a show. A big thank you goes to our show's founding sponsors, the Pepper Master, the Miss V Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, and Psychic Tarot Canada, or PsychicTarot.ca if you're looking on the web. I guess I have to ask myself how my mental health is doing today. And kits and cubs, please, if you are in the chat, let me know how your mental health is doing today. Thank you very much. Oh, and I see that it is Kit Elaine's oldest daughter's birthday. Well, there you go. Happy birthday, Kit Elaine's oldest daughter. I hope it's fabulous. My mental health, doing well overall. I too am a little tired. For some reason. I don't know why. I have been sleeping pretty well, but very tired. My eyes are burning a little bit. It happens when you're fatigued, so I know I'm tired. But otherwise, in good spirits. So nothing going wrong there. Um, but yeah, calm, I guess. I know it's going to be a busy week. And there's also, because, by the way, right, for everyone who's observing Passover, and then it was Palm Sunday. So we're getting close to Easter weekend. So there are lots of gatherings and stuff. And there's travel and things of the like. So it's going to be a busy period, and it's a busy period for a lot of people. And of course, we have an election going on, and we're getting into the meat of it. So again, busy period. So I'm not overwhelmed, but it takes a lot out of me. So yeah, I'm just a little more tired than normal, but good spirits nonetheless. I think that's where I am right now. So I'm going to be kind to myself this week as much as I can, and you know, and everything will be good. Right. Hope you are all doing well as well. Right. Let's see. Well, hey, let's do what we normally do here. We'll take a look first at what has been happening with the polls. Um, there's been a little bit of, um, I guess, some panicking going on because there has been a slight narrowing of the polls. But I mean, before debate, that's usually going to happen anyway, number one. But the narrowing isn't not in any way statistically significant to make people panic to the extent that some are. Right. I believe I was reading something from Evan Scrimshaw the other day that was saying um, when he started his models, his seat count was at a certain level. Uh, and even with this narrowing, there we go. I think I found it right here. The day the campaign started, the Liberals projected for 185 seats in my model. Now, after the Monday released Main Street, but before Nanos and Liaison today, it's 197. Ontario and BC swung left today, and yet people are acting like the sky is falling. It's not. All right. So again, you just have to remember the difference between the top line numbers, the discounts for lack of vote efficiency within the conservative vote, then an extra drop because just the bottom has fallen out of the NDP and the Bloc for all intents and purposes. So there's a little discount there. And then you always have to remember that because we're representation by population, you're looking at Ontario, you're looking at Quebec, and you're looking at British Columbia as the three most populous provinces. And if, despite what the top line number is doing, if the numbers in those provinces are looking better for the Liberals, then it's better for Liberals, despite what the top number says, right? Because again, we're representation by population. So the top line number only gets you so far. You really have to dig deeper into the numbers. But for those who don't go that deep into the polling and don't know how to break it down that much, who don't possess that literacy yet, or nobody's told them, it's easy to trick them with the top line number. Oh my God, it was a 7-point lead. Now it's a 5-point lead. Here we go. Here we go. Right? Not really. If you got to look to see what's going on because of the way our political system happens and how the seats are distributed and where the population of the country lives. So, with that in mind, CBC poll tracker as of the 13th, so at 8:56 a.m., was showing still the Liberals at 44, a little above 44.1, Conservatives at 38. They're bouncing around between 37 and 38. And in this one, you'll see Liberals, -1, Conservatives plus 0.5. So that's a closing of the gap of 0.6. So, again, we're narrowing. But Liberals at 44.1, which is, and that's -1. So 44.2 is probably the highest that they've been on this one. So, yes, there's a narrowing, but it's not statistically significant. So here we see on the CBC poll tracker that Liberals are now down below 200 seats because they got to about 205 at one point. It's 196 here. Conservatives at 123. Bloc Québécois at 18. New Democrat at 5. But this is all within the range it's been for the last 2 weeks, right? There's no trend yet. It's just where it bounces up and down. All right. If we are looking here at 338 Canada as well, it's a similar thing here again. This is updated April 13th as well. We're showing again Ontario, Quebec, and BC in the Liberal columns. And if we're looking at some seat distribution here in British Columbia, they're looking at 22 Liberal, 19 Conservative, 1 NDP. That's probably her first name is not Judy. Last name is Kwan. I can't remember her name. Oh my God, that's terrible. That's terrible. Jenny Kwan. Oh, I am so sorry. I knew it wasn't Judy. I know. We've been talking a lot about Judy Trin lately, and I was mixing up the names. But yeah, Jenny Kwan. She seems to be the person, the candidate for the New Democrats that has the safest seat currently in British Columbia, based on what I've been hearing from listening to various podcasts. So you have Jenny Kwan, and then BC is showing one seat that they're showing here there, the Greens retaining that one, which is new for 338 because they've been showing the Greens at one seat for a while. So that could be the Greens, but it could also be Lloydminster because that one is really a four-person race. I think the Conservatives were at 29, the Greens at 28. There was another party, Liberals were at 27, and then the NDP was at another number there. So there could possibly be a third Green seat if people wanted to vote strategically and move that way. So for people of the kids and cubs who might be in that area, take a look at that because of that one's a tight race. In Ontario, it's 82 Liberal, 37 Conservative, 2 NDP, and 1 Green. So Mike Morris is doing very well there in his Kitchener riding for the Greens. In Quebec, it's 47 Liberal, 18 Bloc, 12 Conservative, and 1 NDP. So it looks like M. Boulris is doing well here in Quebec. Again, unless it is Ruth Hélène Brosseau in Berthier going up to a quick lead after announcing. But for the moment, we will assume it's Boulris, as he's been the one that's been able to maintain the NDP presence in Quebec for a while now. And then when you're looking at this map all across Atlantic Canada, all 7 seats in Newfoundland and Labrador, all 4 seats in PEI, so far leaning Liberal. Nova Scotia, 8 Liberal, 3 Conservative. New Brunswick, 6 Liberal, 4 Conservative there. Even Manitoba leaning Liberal now here is 7 Liberal, 5 Conservative, 2 NDP. And then, of course, the North, as well as you can project, are showing the 3 seats Liberal there. But when we get to Alberta and Saskatchewan, we have 29 Conservative, 7 Liberal, which 7 Liberal in Alberta is a lot considering what's been available lately, and 1 NDP. Saskatchewan, 13 Conservative, and 1 Liberal there. Because to create new seats and whatnot, there is one where borders changed somewhere in Saskatchewan, and there seems to be some enclave, I think up in northern Saskatchewan, more northern Saskatchewan, where there's a little bit, where it's a little bit more liberal compared to the rest of the province, and that the Liberals might have a chance to get a shot there, get a seat there. There might be also a chance for, there's a couple of races in China apparently that are tightening up, and that could present an opportunity if the vote turnout is good. But right now they're still not fully leaning Liberal. In terms of vote projections, so we're showing Liberals at 43, Conservatives at 38. That is a little bit of a narrowing. We've seen larger spreads than 5 on 338. But for seat projection, when we're looking at it, it's still Liberal 194, Conservatives 122, despite the top line number. Right? And the highest the Liberals have achieved on 338 is 195. So they're near still campaign highs. And there's no real shift here in the Conservative number. They've been bouncing between 120 and 122 since about the 3rd of the month on that. So again, people are looking for things to hang on to uh, to create some narratives. Remember, people love the concept of a horse race, and you also have to remember, and this is one thing I keep cautioning you, it's not that the it's not that the conservative vote has abandoned Poilièvre, right? It's that progressives in the nation have seen what a danger he represents and have all decided to make sure that that was not going to happen. That seems to be the state at the moment. So there is a possibility for the bottom to fall out from Poilievre after the debates if he does not have a great performance. And you have to remember, Kids Cubs this week is debate week. hmm So, um, and Pierre goes into these debates with a bit of a different mind frame because when the campaign was going to be just Justin and just carbon tax, when he was going to try to make it that way, he was going to saunter into those debates as the cock on the walk, right? With a very weak Justin that a lot of Canadians, even though they don't really like nasty politics, if they were tired of him, wouldn't have mind, uh, would have forgiven or given Pierre a couple of free passes for taking some roundhouses and making some haymakers and saying outlandish things. Um, they're not there now with the current option, however. Um, Also, Pierre went from it looking like it was going to be a coronation to having blown, a double-digit lead and having people like Corey Tonight snipe out in the press. So, not great. He's got one more shot to talk to the whole nation, right? There's a lot riding on it now. Before it was going to just be the last thing he needed to do. Show up, smile, say a couple of things, land a couple of punches, right? And just to play prime ministerial, right? And if all the press go, oh my God, he was so prime ministerial, he did it so well. I guess and just walk his way to the election. Well, that's not the plan. The plan did not survive first contact. Let's put it that way. So now it's, you know, this is your last shot. Don't blow it, buddy. You better make it happen. Which is a different context to be going in. And again, he hasn't proven to be good off script. So, right? That's going to be a challenge. And in French, for him as well, there is going to be a challenge. Um, there's going to be a bigger challenge for Carney in one sense because to have the bottom having fallen out of the block is going to make it such that Blanchet is really going to go after him. Now, Blanchet is going to go after Poilievre as well. I mean, he has no love for him. But Blanchet has extra motivation to try to suppress the liberal number this time around. And with Blanchet, I talk often about Danielle Smith doing this thing called nice nasty, right? Blanchet is also very, 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 very good at nice nasty. Very good. Nice nasty. Except Danielle's nice nasty is always very ham fisted. It's very mean girlish. Whereas Blanchet is more, uh, some might say, is slightly petulant, um, but it's more like, no, no, I'm from here. I was born here. I know the people. You're not going to come into my house and tell me how things work in my hood. Right? And he has a way of, because he's very nimble with language, has a way of cutting you that sometimes it could go like, whoa, wait, what? Did he? Right? So, in that sense, he's better at making the snide suggestion, right? Or to say the compliment that comes with a couple of razor blades, that type of thing. Um, Pierre is, like I said, just more like right in your face. There is a risk, of course, to doing that because also if you are too aggressive, right, you end up being the focus, and it takes up taken away from your attack. And there appears to be a lot of goodwill towards Carney in the first place. And everybody is seeing he's earning this goodwill, right? There's a goodwill based on his record and whatnot in his resume, yes. But people are seeing how much he is working on his French. I mean, even Le Devoir, right, which is the paper of the Quebec more sovereigntist intelligentsia, right, are saying that, for all his difficulties, his French is clear. So there's a willingness to be sympathetic towards him. There is some goodwill towards him. So Blanchet is aware of this, in his comments, says, now we will do this, kindly and politely and respectfully, but we will. And that's why Blanchet does have that capacity to wrap an attack in diplomacy, in softer language, in not as much aggressive, cutting, venomous confrontation as Pierre does, but still, make no doubt, enough to cut you and make you look like a fool, right? Whereas Pierre will come up and punch you right in the face, Blanchet can pants you in front of everyone. Just put it that way, right? And he has much more motivation. He was Blanchet thought that by now, because Blanchet said this in his opening, at some point the election is going to have to be about more than just this, and we will be having policy after policy. And the Conservative plan was actually quite similar, actually, right? But that day has not come yet. And Blanchet is getting a little frustrated, and according to reports in French language media, it has shown, and his attacks have gotten a little sharper. So everybody's human. So if Blanchet is not able to keep that frustration in check, those little slices then take on an edge that leaves certain people feeling a little uncomfortable. Right. So it's a very, 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 and in particular, I mean, that's for everyone, but the Québécois have a particular, what they call the corde sensible about this, a chord, an inner chord that is, like everyone, they don't mind a good attack and they don't mind a good, harsh but fair. But when it starts to get mean, they're not all that into that. They're not all into that. And there've been a couple, and there've been a couple of times, like in Quebec culture. I remember there's one year there's a year-end special called the Bye Bye that happens all the time, and there was one where they thought that the jokes were a little personal. Let's put it that way. And the people who watch the show did not were not shy about writing in and letting them know that I don't know what you did, but whatever that was, the good clean fun somewhere took a little turn. That was those were a little. We laughed, but it was like right rather than ha. So there's only so far you can go on that. And I mean, that's for everybody. Like, I mean, unless you're like really in the camp and you want to see somebody like just flatten someone, then, you're going like this, oh my God, that was so great. But for like people who are just like, moderate and temperate at home, like, a good attack, good parry, good thrust, landing one, even being a little sharp, elbows up in the corners, that's fine. As long as they're not too much. But just the, punching someone in the kidneys when they got their back turned, not so much, right? We're a fair play country. So these are some concerns that people are going to have to watch for. Now, I want you to put a pin in this because this is going to come back. We're going to talk about an event that happened last night where all of this dynamic plays and is now fed by the events of last night. Just giving you a little cliffhanger there. But before we do that, kids and cubs, as we do, because this was a long opening tidbit here. It's more like a whole section rather than a tidbit, to be honest. But of course, from polling and these types of considerations that are going out there, we also are looking at the markets every morning because, well, there have been developments yet again. Of course, right? It's Trump. So it would seem that over the course of the weekend, um, things got to a point at which the United States and China were basically at 125% tariffs against each other for all intents and purposes. And, well, let's see. China, what I've been saying, that there's a number at which tariffing more just has no beneficial impact, makes no material change. Well, China basically said, okay, United States, you're at 125%. We're at that 125% too. And then the finance ministry said, with tariff rates at the current level, there is no longer a market for U.S. goods imported into China. If the U.S. government continues to increase tariffs on China, Beijing will ignore it. So in other words, there's nothing more you can do that can make things worse because there's no longer a market for your goods. You've raised them so high. So raise them to 1,000 if you want, knock yourselves out. Now, what China can do, however, is they have tons of non-tariff measures like, certain companies can't get this particular rare earth anymore. Sorry. Oops. It could be things like that, however, that can make things a little more complicated for the United States. Now, the claim from the China Finance Ministry that any future rises in tariffs or increases in tariffs from the United States will be ignored does present Donald Trump, IQ 47, with a save face opportunity. He can take that and run to the cameras and run to the microphones and spin that and says, see, I won. China gives up. They don't want to increase anymore. Since they stopped increasing, I'll stop increasing too. Because China really wants to make a deal. They just don't know how to get there, but they want to make a deal. Remember that one? Right? So he can claim he won. And along with that, well, wouldn't you know, he reversed himself on the 125% tariffs on China for things such as laptops and televisions and chips and solar cells and flash drives and I think someone was worried that what would happen if somebody was going to buy their next iPhone and it was more than double the price all of a sudden, or had to renew their laptops. Now, he gave 3 reasons for these tariffs, right? One, to address trade deficits, to generate revenue, and to bring manufacturing jobs back. What if you were taking off the 125% tariffs on the iPhones and whatnot? What manufacturing jobs are you bringing back in that sector? Interesting. The United States has a trade deficit with China of $295.4 billion, but Chinese electronics and electrical products make up a greater than the quarter of all of China's exports. All of China's exports. So China exports $896 billion in electronic goods to the United States alone. Greater than the surplus. That's $896 billion in electronic goods that was going to cost close to, my God, I think the next number up is trillion. So close to $2 trillion all of a sudden. Wow. That's so yeah, that's something that Americans would notice. Would definitely notice. A lot of people are expecting to have a tech stock rebound on the stock market today as a result of that, right? The other thing to remember as well when it comes to a trade war between China and the United States, Chinese exports to the United States constitutes only about 3% of the GDP of China at the moment. So it's not like 20 or 25 years ago, right? The China is now doing so much business all around the world. They've diversified enough that, you know, a 3% hit to GDP, don't get me wrong, is a lot, but it's definitely survivable. So if China cut off all trade with the United States, except for stuff that was absolutely essential that they couldn't find anywhere else, like I said, it would take a hit, but it would definitely be survivable. It wouldn't be like if we did that, we cut off everything, right? China is more able to weather that. So yeah, just boom, reverse themselves on that. So yeah, not sure how it brings manufacturing jobs back. Not sure how it generates revenue because, like I said, if that's the largest of all the sectors of exporting sectors for China, goods from China, and they're all exempt all of a sudden. So it's not going to generate revenue. It's not going to bring manufacturing jobs back, and it doesn't address the trade deficit. It's again, it's the larger sector of export. So now, if he wants to balance that trade deficit of $295.4 billion, it has to be on all Chinese exports except electronics and electrical products, the biggest sector. So again, tying a hand behind their back. Again, at some point, the math is going to have difficulty mathing again. But yeah, that's what happened over the course weekend with that. And as a result, if you're looking at the futures in pre-market for the Dow, we're looking at an implied open of 425 and a couple of points for a rise of 1%. The S&P futures 1.5% up, and the Nasdaq futures 1.8% up. So definitely a stronger performance. Not super strong compared to the Dow future, but a stronger performance so far predicted for the Nasdaq at the opening. And if we are looking around the world at the moment in markets in Asia, there definitely is a bit of a bounce today. Nothing dramatic, but basically from 0.5% up on the Shenzhen in China to all the way up to 2.4% up on the Hang Seng. The Nikkei is up today, which is good for a change, a little bit, but all within normal sort of trading areas, nothing too effervescent going on. On the European stock markets, things are a little more buoyant, for lack of a better word. But the FTSE in the United K is up 1.74% at the moment, which is the lowest of all of them. The highest being the DAX in Germany at 2.45%. So a lot of them, again, between 1.75% and about 2.5% up for the day. But to the higher, all of them to the higher range, right? Because a 1% growth day is pretty good. So I mean, these are good days, but it's not like the day of the big rebound when the Nasdaq went back up 12% in one day, right? It's not a 1 year of profit in one day, but this type of move with this type of sector could be, if Donald Trump doesn't say too many other things that can swing stuff, could be something that could be sustained for a day or two or three, and could make things go well. So, for example, where you're looking at the overall markets that have like about a 2% up, if you're looking at Apple specifically, for example, Apple's at 5.57% up, and pre-stock in pre-market moving, NVIDIA at 3.36%. So the tech stocks and the bigger ones are bumping up a bit. Even Tesla's up nearly 2%, right? In pre-market trading at the moment. So hopefully a little bit of stability. It seems to be that somewhere along the way he's making these big announcements, and then other people are then realizing, dude, you can't do that for China. Everybody that needs to go buy a TV to watch you, a computer to watch you, now has to pay more than double for it. That's not going to work out well for you. So there are certain things he seems to listen to, and there are certain things he seems not to, and it doesn't seem that he cares about the um, breaking things first and then having to pull it back after, and if it makes him look foolish because one, there's so many other things going on that how can you keep track of them? But two, like I said, I remember him saying that in the first time around. I win. That's what I do. I win. I always win. Right. So no matter what happens like this, he always goes back to the camera and frames it as him winning somehow. So that's what's going on with polls. That's what's going on with the market tariff stuff. The tariff stuff led Mark Carney, of course, to take some time off on the weekend from the campaign and maybe even Friday, and to put the prime minister hat on because he said once a week he would be having certain meetings. So he did have that. A lot of people were making a case that this time it seemed like he was, doing it just for the sake of doing it, because the first two times he had to do it, there were some, big pronouncements, and this week that there wasn't one. But there were some big pronouncements in the sense that when Trump reversed himself on the allegedly reciprocal tariffs, making it 10% all over, except for China, I think, with the exception. And then Canada wasn't affected by that because the 10% wasn't on in the first place. You had Pierre Poilièvre going all across the country. Well, you see, Mark Carney didn't get anything reduced. Well, yeah, he didn't get anything reduced this time, but he also didn't get, when they came on, nothing got put on. You weren't running around the country saying, "Oh, look at Mark Carney." Well, I guess he did so well that we didn't get hit by more tariffs. Right? But because when tariffs that weren't applied on us were not removed, didn't result in any further tariff reduction on our part, he was going out and trying to sell that as Mark Carney failed somehow. This is the level of lame that the attacks have now gone to on that side. But he did, have some meetings and that type of stuff. And there are things to be concerned about, right? There are lumber tariffs coming. In fact, if I remember correctly, it seems that I think I had saw something last night. Yeah, there we go. US hits Canada lumber with 34% duties even before tariffs. That happened on April 7th. Yeah. Didn't that just slipped by somewhere and didn't get the coverage it deserved, didn't it? The United States is poised to more than double duties on Canada softwood. Sorry, let me try that again. The United States is poised to more than double duties on Canadian softwood lumber to 34.45%, putting more pressure on U.S. material costs even before President Donald Trump places any new tariffs on the sector. The U.S. currently levies countervailing and anti-dumping duties totaling 14.4%, a level that was set last year. Those are now set to rise another 20 percentage points, according to the Department of Commerce memo. Trump has threatened but not yet imposed further import taxes on lumber. The president has ordered a national security investigation into U.S. imports of wood and has said the U.S. doesn't need Canada's, but U.S. home builders have warned that more tariffs will only drive up the cost of new housing. So this will probably be another thing where it'll post stuff like this, and then he'll pull stuff back because he'll get all the calls from the industry and say, "You dumbass, what are you doing? You need to build housing. We have a housing problem here too. Let's go, man." And and then finds a way to pull back and declare victory somehow, right? The current duties are the result of a trade dispute between Canada and the U.S. that has been dragging on for decades. The U.S. claims Canadian sawmills are subsidized because forests north of the border are largely owned by provincial governments, which they allege set low fees known as stumpage rates to undercut the market. Canada denies this. Quote, "Our stumpage system is grounded in market principles with timbers sold through open competitive auctions," quote Nick Widet, president of the British Columbia Lumber Trade Council, said in an emailed statement. That's separate from the barrage of tariffs being imposed by the White House in Trump's second term, which include tariffs on Canadian products that aren't in compliance with the Canada-US-Mexico trade accord, and a separate 25% tariffs on steel, aluminum, and automobiles. And I heard in some podcast somewhere that the total amount of Canadian trade with the United States that is fully CUSMA compliant is about 38%. I don't know how they measured that specifically. That was a number I got. I would assume it would be more because most of our there's not very many sectors that are CUSMA exempt. So I'm not exactly. Again, I think it might have to do with the fact that we mentioned in a previous show that there's a lot of companies that didn't either file paperwork or whatnot to be able to benefit from the CUSMA exemption, because without it, I think that the basic tariff rate or something between Canada and the United States was like 1.3% or 1.4%. It wasn't very high to start with. So a lot of people just maybe saw too much of a hassle for whatever benefit that there is. That might change. There might be a lot of corporations now trying to get an official certification of being CUSMA compliant in order to avoid higher level. So that might be why that number is particularly low. But that would be just speculation on my part. I really, my best guesstimate based with all the other information that I know, I don't actually have not heard any experts speak about this to say that that's specifically why that is. They're just two data points that I've heard in two different interviews, and I'm linking them together to say, look, maybe that's it. So don't run to the bank with that one. That's just my best guess. Lumber is a major industry in Canadian provinces, including British Columbia and Quebec. BC Premier David Eby said he will discuss the new duties with Liberal leader Mark Carney on Monday and called the new rates an attack on forced workers and British Columbians, adding they'd increase housing costs for Americans who voted for a president who promised to lower costs. And just a little note here, this is not a meeting that's taking place today. Remember, this is an article that was written on the 7th, so this is when they had these discussions when Mark Carney was in British Columbia, or at the beginning of last week, I believe it is. Canada's practices cause everyday egregious harm to the U.S. industry, U.S. Lumber Coalition Chairman Andrew Miller said in a statement. These unfair trade practices are designed by Canada to maintain an artificially inflated U.S. market share for Canadian products and force U.S. companies to curtail production, thereby killing U.S. jobs. New duties come on the back of other pressures such as higher input cuts, wildfires, and a mountain pine beetle outbreak that has affected tens of millions of acres of forests in Western Canada. In Quebec, the second largest producing region in the country, industry executives are struggling to see past the pressures and now see a wall of U.S. trade barriers. At today's prices, it's an unequivocal. I can't say that word in English. An unequivocal dead end, said Frédéric Véro, Vice President of Corporate Affairs at Les Chantiers du Chibougamau Limité, a major Quebec wood processor selling roughly half of its products to the U.S. Quote, a 2x4 piece will sell for about $3 today, but the same piece was selling for more than $10 in 2022, even though our production costs have risen. So there you go. There are reasons, right? And another reason that Carney wanted to do that was, of course, given that we are in the final weeks, wanted to put some things in place and I think leave instructions for new government, should it not be his, to where things are and what the next levers should be pulled should they want to continue down the same path that has already been established and not go their own way. So, while the reason for putting on the prime minister hat wasn't as flashy as the other two times, it is no less necessary to be doing these regular check-ins. So again, a lot of people try to take advantage of this, try to twist this effect to say that Mark Carney was taking a day off because he was afraid to face questions and all that kind of stuff. But as we showed in a previous show, that of all the four the leaders of the four major parties, Pierre Poilièvre by far has been the one who has taken the fewest amount of questions directly from press pools. Now Pierre Poilièvre tries to spin that as say, well, I take more questions from local media than anybody else. Yes, but it's still a lower amount of questions total, even including that. And that's the point. So, Yesterday was a big day in politics. Uh, if you, particularly if you speak French, but again, whole things can affect things that happen in Quebec specifically can affect the election. It's not so much whether Liberals will win or not. And again, not saying that it's in the bag, but the way that the trends are going, it's looking decent. But whether or not it will actually be a majority or a minority, right? Majority and minority pass through both sort of Quebec and British Columbia. If the bottom falls out, if the Bloc has a revival sometime after these two debates and moves back from 18 to 36 seats, that directly impacts the Liberals' ability to form a majority government, right? Uh, Often as Quebec goes, other places go too. So if there's a drop in Quebec, there might be a small drop in Ontario, which could also affect. But the other place for the majority is that even based on the best numbers that we have so far, it still seems that when you get to the end of Ontario, that the best that Liberals can do still doesn't put them in a majority position, right? And if that case, if they do get all the seats that they can get out of Quebec, the chances are that they'll have to wait until British Columbia to find out whether or not there's a majority. Now, if they're able to snag 7 seats in Alberta and 7 seats in Manitoba and 1 in Saskatchewan, 15, um, that could tip them over the edge potentially before they get to British Columbia, potentially. Um, but assuming that 7 is in Alberta is looking at the very, very optimistic side of things, and 7 in Manitoba as well. Uh, odds are, odds are that and if everything stays constant in Quebec, odds are that majority versus minority will be decided in British Columbia. So there will still be some suspense until the end of the night. But there's greater potential for suspense until the end of the night as we're watching the election results come in this year. Um, wow. Oh, Kit Kat WPP won't even attend a debate in his own riding. Really interesting. Okay. I just I just took a look to the side here in the chat because I noticed I hadn't been looking at it very long, and that was what that comment from Kit Kat W was right up there. I had not heard about that. I did hear about the incident over the weekend though, where um, Pierre did not seem to know in which electoral riding he was. He was holding an event that was being promoted as being in the Nepean riding, which is the riding right next to his, Carleton, which happens to be the riding in which Mark Carney is running. But turns out the event actually was located in Carleton riding. Interesting. Um, Pierre having to hold an event in his own riding now, and then, well, see, that's the thing. We don't know if they really thought that it was in Nepean and then they just screwed up, which is bad. Or if they were holding it in his writing, but just saying it was in Nepean so that nobody would realize it. Because oh my God, he's holding an event in his own writing. Eep. Because that's a little scary. Party leaders spend very little time in their own writing. It's usually they have a whole team of people to go knock on doors and do that kind of stuff on their behalf. And they might be in there one day here or there, very quickly, but usually they're out, trying to, like a provincial election, campaign towards the whole province or campaign towards the whole nation. So they need a very, very strong team in their own writing because it's very rare it's going to be them doing their own door knocking in that case. So for Pierre to have held an event in his own writing, if that was intentional at this point in the campaign, little concerning. Could usually that's not a sign of a campaign that is going well, usually. And as we have mentioned on the show, there appears to be some buzz that there is a possibility that he could lose his own seat because there's a candidate there named Bruce Panjoy who had secured his nomination quite a long time ago. And this man, he's documented everything. He has put in the kilometers, he has put in the hours, he has been extremely present in an electoral riding at a time where Pierre was not at all because he was crisscrossing the country for the last 2.5 years now, presenting himself as the inevitable prime minister. So it seems that hard work may be starting to pay off for Mr. Fanjoy. And therefore, it could very well be that Mr. Poilièvre is getting a little nervous about even keeping his own seat. And not to forget that we mentioned it a couple of weeks ago, but there was some shot fired because during the Liberal leadership campaign, Mark Carney made a point to stop in Carleton and spend some time with Bruce Fanjoy to help elevate his profile, which certainly didn't hurt because a couple of weeks after that, we started seeing polls indicating that Fanjoy could possibly take that riding away from Poilievre. It makes an interesting situation, actually. We might end this election with, of course, no Trudeau because he's already gone, and with Singh potentially going, and with Poilievre potentially going, and potentially Miss May stepping aside a little more, and depending how bad things go for Blanchette, maybe even him getting bounced. So this could end up, all these party leaders that were trying to be too cute by half prior to the dissolution of Parliament to try to get some type of advantage in this election may have all um, cleverly engineered themselves into situations in which all of them end up losing their jobs. Wouldn't that be ironic? Don't you think? Oh God. I should not be laughing so far. I should not be taking such delight. But I mean, they got too damn greedy. That's all I'm gonna say. A lot of them had a really good deal with the way things were, and they got too damn greedy. And they decided to take a gamble, and right now it's not looking like it'll pay off. But again, 2 weeks and some is plenty of lifetimes, particularly when you've got the debate coming up. Now, as I was mentioning, there were a lot of things. Pierre made an announcement about veterans and all that kind of stuff. Again, you can take that with what you want from conservatives. There's more, announcements on different types of things that were all out there. All those things. Mark Carney made a great announcement on for tourism, something called the Canada Pass, which is can't remember exactly because it includes the parks and it includes Via and that type of stuff. Um, yeah, so I can't remember them all of them at on the top of my head, uh, but it was basically when I was mentioning that there are other aspects on which on a slow day that people can make announcements. Well, tourism, it's a huge industry. I mean, we're talking about with regard to the United States right now, right? The number of Canadian tourists that are not going, how it affects an economy. So over here, same thing. So we're trying to encourage more tourism here in Canada, right? Trying to encourage people to travel more at home. So yeah, basically he announced something called a Canada Strong Pass, which it'll make it easier for families and young people to explore the country. He announced the initiative on Saturday, saying that with the U.S. president threatening our economy and sovereignty, Canadians are uniting to find new ways to discover and celebrate our beautiful country. Whether it's trips to national parks and historic sites, spending the day at a national art gallery or museum, or hiking Canadian trails, my new government will help the next generation discover all Canada has to offer this summer. So the pass will let kids and teens under 18 get into national galleries and museums for free and ride via rail at no cost when they're traveling with their parents. That's good deal. The pass will be available from June to August 2025 with discounted access and fares also offered to young Canadians aged 18 to 24. They said they're willing to work with provinces and territories to establish similar pricing structures. As part of the initiative, the Liberals said camping fees in national parks will be reduced during the same period to make it easier for families to get out and enjoy the outdoors. Last week, Carney also announced that he wants to make national parks and historic sites available for free this summer. Carney also shared on social media Saturday that he spoke with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte and emphasized that Canada's unwavering commitment to the alliance, calling it ironclad, and pledging to ensure the country pulls its full weight in with NATO. So that's just a side thing there. So there are announcements that you can make in smaller days, to take care of smaller industries and that type of stuff. And Pierre Poilievre is not really making them. He's choosing to make more announcements with regard to housing or crime or coming back to certain things, whereas the Liberals seem to be spreading some stuff out too. They also had an announcement about CBC a while ago and that type of stuff. But again, very, very low news in terms of announcements and that type of stuff, enough to keep something in the press. But right now, it's debate prep, because that's Wednesday and Thursday. And of course, there was prep for what happened yesterday, which was essentially the battle of Tout le monde parle. Now, if you remember, Kits and Cubs, there was a time earlier in the campaign where TVA, the news station in Quebec, which I would say if you were looking at things, TVA would be the equivalent of CTV or Global in that sense, right? It is and it's not a publicly funded network; it's a private network, and they wanted to host an event. Now, TVA is famous for not participating in the consortium debates that are going to be taking place this week, and hosted their own event. And they had something called Face à Face, and every year they were doing it on their own. But this year, again, because of rising costs and all that type of stuff, they asked all the parties to contribute $75,000 to the production costs in order to be able to host it. The Bloc was all in, and then the Conservatives were in. The NDP said, well, they had some ethical issues with it, but they decided to go in rather than standing up and saying, no, you can't actually make us pay for access to be able to debate on your network. I mean, you have access to the public airwaves. There's a duty with that, right? So they stood on principle, and a lot of people would. Blanchet was trying to make this frame it as a mistake, because it also happened very close in time to the fact that Mark Carney made the mistake of how would I put it delicately? Made the mistake of getting the name of Nathalie Provost incorrect, and she was a survivor of the shooting at Polytechnique, and he had referred to that one as the shooting at Concordia. So those two things happened very close to another, and Blanchet was trying to turn that a little bit lightly, not pushing too hard to the fact that maybe he just doesn't know us as well. Of course, Nathalie Provost did come out and say, I'm not worried about that type of stuff. I'm worried about the policy, and he's got the policy right. That's fine. It's not the first time that anybody's referred to me as Pronovo instead of Provost. I mean, it happens to me all the time, right? So she tried to, she helped with that, to try to make that go away. But when that happened, I made a comment that I said that Tout le monde parle is now what we would say in French, an incontournable. He just can't get around it. He absolutely has to go now. But the thing that happened in between, and we mentioned it on the show, there was one from Radio-Canada called Cinq chefs, une élection, where all five were interviewed by a panel of 3 journalists, one by one, and then it was put together as a special. And in that one, right, it was the first time that Pierre Poilièvre and Mark Carney were on a same show at the same time, though not sharing a stage. And when we looked at that, we had concluded that Carney had the better performance. Again, not by a nautical mile, but it had the better performance. But in this one, we had also noted specifically that the journalists were showing him some goodwill, and at the beginning, being more indulgent with his difficulty in French, sometimes using slightly simpler language or a slower pace of speech, in order to ensure that the candidate or the interviewee was be able to understand as much as possible and get out as much as possible, because the point here is not to get you right, and the point here is to try to give the audience the best possible chance of getting the best quality response. And if you remember, a few elections ago, there was an instance of playing with language that did sink a leader. And it was when Stéphane Dion went and did an interview with CTV in Atlantic Canada, and English not being his first language. And the interviewer asked him a question that was simple, but the way it was formulated had different time tenses and some suppositions that made it, for someone who was not a native English speaker, difficult. The question was sort of like, if you had been prime minister, what would you have done differently to ensure something? And he was seeking clarifications. And anyway, then that got played on a loop and a loop and a loop and a loop, and it ended up sinking him. There were no questions like that in Cinq Chefs une élection for Carney. Um, but Pierre was not able to not be Pierre and go on the attack and, do the, you're worthless and weak, we're worthless and weak type thing. And had a lot of difficulty talking about himself in the present tense. So it didn't really go well for him. It wasn't like a disaster, but it didn't go well. And Carney ended up on top. Well, yesterday was Tout le monde parle. A lot of the leaders are going, and it isn't like Cinq Chefs une élection where it's a special where all the leaders are there. So last night they're doing several of them over several weeks as their schedules are available. But last night, Carney and Poilièvre were there at the same time. Again, not on the same stage at the same time, one after another. It seems that Team Poilièvre was the first to answer the invitation from the people from Tout le monde parle. There's no surprise there. Of course, his wife is grew up mostly in Quebec all of her life, and she's basically the person that they keep on turning back there for the touchstone with regard to French culture and Quebec culture. So she very much would probably be advising him, given how active a role she is taking in the campaign. She very much is advising him to go on Tout le monde parle again. It's you absolutely have to do that. So being quick to say yes is a no-brainer here. Given that he was the first to say yes, he got the choice as to whether or not he wanted to go first or second. And once again, Pierre chose to go first. Even though it has not worked for him the first two times he has done this, he still decided to go first again. And again, if you go first, you set the tone. You set the bar. As the person comes after you, clears it, you fade away. So he did come out. He proactively went to the co-host and the host and shook their hands, which was different from Carney. Carney just came and he sat down. They did shake hands after the interview with Carney and whatnot. So Poilièvre did the more proactive politician glad handing thing first. That's neither good nor bad, just difference in styles. Sat down and how would I put it? The questions were different for both of them. And Poilièvre's ones were more open in general. Carney's ones, a lot of them were specific and drilled in on specific points. But with Poilièvre, still, right? You have to understand that Tout le monde parle is not it's not a news show specifically, right? It's not a journalistic show. It's a current affairs show, but not done by journalists, right? The host of the show, Guy Lepage, was a member of a very, very famous comedy troupe in Quebec. And then, this is a concept, Tout le monde parle, that comes from Europe and that they brought here. So they're two comedians, right? The host and the co-host. The co-host is relatively the one that they have now is relatively new. There was a person there before that had been on like since the beginning for many, 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 many years. But they're people who come from the world of comedy who are very, very engaged. So it's a broad public and current affairs show. So sometimes they will have people in from the medical world, they'll have people from the political world, but they'll have in lots of artists as well and whatnot. So it's very, very broad. So it's a good show if you want to have your finger on the pulse of Quebec culture, right? That's the show you want to watch. And if you are doing anything in Quebec, that's the show that you want to get on, to be able to talk to la nation québécoise about what it is that you are doing, because this is it's a big rendezvous, right? This is watched by over 1 million people in Quebec every week, right? On a slow night, and even more on a big night like this. So it is it's a cultural rendezvous, in the province of Quebec, this show. And even if you don't watch it, even if people don't watch it, they will read about it. There will be snippets on the news. Um, it's a really big deal, and I don't think we actually have an equivalent in English Canada at all, right? But it would be the equivalent of like Carney going on the Daily Show in the United States, right? Everybody watched it here, and there was a cultural moment. He had to nail that one. It's sort of like that, right? And it's not just for Quebec; it's for all French Canada because this is again, it's a Société Radio Canada, so this is broadcast from coast to coast to coast. So if you're a francophone in Vancouver, you're a francophone in Yellowknife, you're a francophone in Saint Boniface, right? You are tuned into this to have an opportunity to see this in French. Right? So it is the rendezvous. You just cannot escape it. He was asked pretty much point blank, first question about his drop in the polls. So, and again, the questions are going to come as if, again, not asked by a journalist and not asked by a diplomat and not necessarily asked by a friend, right? It's like, I'm from Quebec. I'm a Quebec citizen. I happen to have this position here on the stage where I get to run the show. But yeah, what's up with that? Right? So you'll get the questions asked with this type of tone, right? It's this type of discourse. It's much more casual, much more relaxed, much more everyday conversational French that happens in bars and cafes and whatnot than your typical TV interview level French, right? So both of them, while they did not excel, right? And you can't have them both excel just by their level of French specifically. They both did well for all intents and purposes. Poilièvre didn't sink himself in any way, shape, or form. But I don't think he endeared himself in any way. There was polite applause when he was done. Now, at the end of the Carney section, here's some. I was waiting to see what the applause would be, and there was no applause because as soon as the question was over, the last question was over, the host had to segue into the break. And then the applause came after the segue. So it's kind of hard to judge. The applause was louder and more enthusiastic, but it's hard to distinguish how much of that is specifically for Carney and the interview he did and just the applause that comes right on a live show as you're about to go segue into commercial, like yeah, to keep the energy of the show up and that type of thing. So unfortunately, I didn't get a direct comparison, but for Père Poilièvre, the applause at the end was markedly more tepid than the applause coming in. So I interpreted it as a sign that, okay, you did, okay, like that, but they weren't particularly impressed. By going first, again, Pierre Poilièvre gets the advantage, given he's been doing this of lifting all of Carney's lines to, in this context, appear like the person who said it first. And when Carney says it, Du's taking Poilièvre's lines, and it actually did come up in the interview. It actually did come up in the interview when Monsieur Guy Lepage was asking Carney early on about what it was he was saying. He says, well, that sounds very much what the guy before was saying. It's like, well, yeah, but that's one of the things of going first. That's what Poilièvre did, right? Now, you got to remember when I'm saying set the tone, right? It's twice that Poilièvre has done this. On the day that the writ was drawn, he launched his campaign before the writ actually was drawn and preempted Carney. And then on the day before the allegedly reciprocal tariffs were to be announced, he responded to those tariffs the day before they were announced in order to preempt Carney on that. So in this interview, again, he also lifted Carney's lines, particularly that we can't control the president one. He was the first one out to say that on that plateau right? That day. So it made him look like, his idea first. So he took a lot of Carney's lines that way. But eventually, because it was about a 16, 17-minute interview, he got to the point where he was speaking about us being weak. And I think there was a passage where he mentioned the word faible or faiblesse, which is weak or weakness, about 5 or 6 times in the space of about, you know, 3 minutes maybe. So he really wanted to hammer that message that was clearly intentional, that we had been left in a place that was weak. Um, there were times where he tried to relate, and while not cringe, it was awkward at times, slightly off, uh, didn't really land. But nothing cringed, nothing like, uh, "Ooh, my crowd size. Did you really like that?" But not great. I mean, and it started right off the beginning when he came to sit down. One of the guests on the show is Kevin Parent, who's a very, very famous rock singer um, in Quebec. Just very, very famous and has been for a long time. And again, the trying to relate, I was like, well, I'm here because my wife really wanted to meet Kevin Parent. She's a big fan of his, so it kind of creates the impression slightly I don't really want to be here. And I'm sure that that's not what he was going for, right? He's going for, trying a cute moment. And it's like, oh, yeah. It's like, oh, my wife isn't here for me. She's here for the other guy because she likes him. Ha ha ha, right? But again, right? He doesn't have the personality to land the joke. So, yeah, it's like I said, a, a little awkward, not off, just awkward. When like someone enters the room and s- the timing's off, right? Or they say something that know, and it just lands like, oh, okay, and then we move on, right? That's what I mean by awkward. Um, Now the thing with Tout le monde en parle and the thing with, um, unfortunately, this type of thing with Kevin Parent, um, is that, I'm not sure how well they did their research, but, one of the reasons, Parent was on the show was to, give his take on, allegations of sexual misconduct that involved him. Um, yeah. So, the guy, again, it's not. There's certain places you don't want to go, and given that Pierre Poilièvre is the guy that had the Mig tag hashtag and did recently refer to biological clocks, and then recently did have the "oh, you can tell me how big it is" moment with Laura Stone, might have not been a good idea to mention that your wife was there because she really wanted to meet a guy who happens to be on the show to be talking about allegations of sexual impropriety that were levied against him. Yeah. Yeah. I am, again, like I said, like, not fully cringe, and you would have had to have known that, particularly if you're in English Canada, um, and put all those pieces together. But again, for those of us who do, it's like, you may not have wanted to bring attention to that specifically. Um, but like I said, ask he was asked a lot of questions, and like I said, didn't flub on too many of them per se. People who are conservative minded will like what he had to say on a lot of stuff. He wasn't as venomous. He wasn't really venomous at all. He didn't actually go on the attack against Carney all that much on this one. Um, he was more statesman-like-ish, I guess, than we're typically used to seeing him, but that's an insufficient word because there's really nothing about him that's statesman-like, right? It's just relative to the usual stuff that we see. Um, if this was a thinking that, I just need to act prime ministerial and tone it down for 16 minutes here, and Quebec will buy it exercise, because it's not the usual. It was the softer, kinder, gentler, trying to relate, trying to human Pierre Poilièvre that we got on Tout le monde parle, rather than the vindictive little snot we know him to be. Pardon, that just came out. For Carney, however, they did not take it easy on him with language at all. Uh, the level of language, the complexity of the sentence structure, the use of imagery, the use of local colloquialisms. Um, I remember, I think it was like the second or third question, whatnot. It was a very, very long question. And Guy Lepage like leaned in to ask it, and it was long and it was twisty and it was turny and it had like, les gens trouvent ça gossant. So these are like local expressions. Gossant. You have to be from Quebec to know what it is, right? And you could see in that particular question, like Carney's like eyes showing that he's like really focusing, like, okay, you're saying a lot of words here. Like, so I have to pay attention to try to figure out what is at least the gist of this question. Uh, and he was able to pick it out. So there was a test going on there like this, and that level was much stronger for Carney than it was for Poilievre in the questions being asked. Um, People who know will notice this, right? Who understand French will know this. That, you know what? Okay, let's see if you really do understand French, and let's see if you really do understand our culture, and let's we're gonna go into this. So the types of questions, level of language, complexity, so all of that, nobody took it easy on him. It was not. It was the complete opposite of cinq chefs une élection when it came to this. Carney clearly understands way more and way more rapidly than he can speak it and translate it in his head and get it out. He did not get snagged on the French. Like I mentioned, even Le Devoir and CBC, Radio-Canada in French said his French was clear. They asked him point blank about Bill 21 and Bill 96. Right? Bill 21 was the secularism law, I believe, that does not allow for certain people who practice certain religions to wear their religious garb in the practice of certain employment. And then Bill 96 is a language law. And for both of them, the notwithstanding clause has been used preemptively. So he was asked about that specifically, and he was able to make it clear, not as elegant as he needed, and probably not with enough easily delivered language to support it. But the overall concept that it's about the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, and not about being anti-secularism or being anti-French in any way, shape, or form. So he was able to get that out relatively clearly without going into too much more detail. For a lot of people, this might be insufficient, but he didn't get snagged and he didn't hurt himself. Same thing with the Pronovo Concordia Gaff. You could see the expression on his face was like, yeah, yeah, that kind of happened, and said, you know what, but it happened, and I'm transparent about it. And I prefer to be that way. right? To just, if I'm going to make a mistake, I'll make a mistake, and yeah, I owned it, that type of thing. So again, might not be sufficient for certain people, um, but was enough. Was enough for most people who were fair and for being fair and reasonable about it. He did it as well as he could with those questions, but he was asked them pointedly. What about Bill 21? What about Bill 96? What about, Poilièvre was never asked a question about that specific about those types of things, right? About specific issues. Um, Near the end of the interview, he was asked specifically because they wanted to get it like come on, right? Like do you know us? Like to anything, like a singer, a TV show, a this, a that, a cheese, right? Something Quebec unique to us. Um, when Pierre Poilievre was asked a little bit about that, like he made the Kevin Parra reference and then said that his wife really liked the show La Petite Vie, all that kind of stuff. But none of them were, again, related to him specifically, other than, he spoke French a little bit as a kid and then lost it and then got it back, right? Getting some of it back. But there wasn't a lot about him and his particular cultural attachment and that type of stuff. Pierre Poilievre was also asked directly about CBC and Radio Canada and tried to make the distinction, that uh, for English Canada, there's so many other choices of media and options and whatnot, and not so for Quebec. And, and I mean, yes and no to that question. Per capita, Quebec is maybe better served, actually. Because they have a CBC like we do, and like in TV Ontario. In Ontario, we have that. They have a Télé-Québec, so they have a provincial public broadcaster. We have CTV um, and Global. I believe they also have two smaller independent French networks to go along with it. We are two major dailies are the Globe and Mail and the Toronto Star. If you can add the National Post, if you want. There, three, but then one of them's more considered the intelligentsia, which is the Globe and Mail. So that's Le Devoir, and then they have La Presse, and then the Journal de Montréal. So they each have there are similar structures in both. So in that case, right? How would I put that difference isn't as stark as Poilièvre is actually making it. But of course, there's all of that infrastructure to serve far fewer people in the province of Quebec. And that's why I keep on saying the star system in Quebec is as large in all of Quebec as the one for all of Canada, right? Because they produce enough content to fill all these TV networks with shows for a population that is way smaller. So while it is true-ish, it's not exactly so, right? And therefore, he's using that as saying that it's more important to keep Société Radio-Canada, and then specifically, of course, on this point is true, is that for francophones all across the country, that's how it is, right? That's their best way to getting it. He remembers as a kid, if it wasn't for Société Radio-Canada, there would have been no exposure to French on television in his part of the world, in Manitoba, right? So, was it Manitoba or Alberta? I can't remember now. If he grew up a little bit in Manitoba. See, I'm mixing up bios. But let's just say on the prairies. To be in that way, I'll use a broader term, and that way I will not be wrong. Oh man, which is what Carney should have done on the Polytechnique and Nathalie Provost thing. So here we, like I said, it's an answer that can pass in the moment, but it's not the strongest one, right? But that was the extent of his defense of Radio Canada versus CBC. But for Mark Carney, when he was asked this cultural question, they're basically, say, okay, he won't be able to say anything. Well, he did mention that he liked, of course, Cœur de Pirate, which is a singer in Quebec that some English Canadians do know because she has had a couple of songs in English that have made the charts. as well, because she sings in both languages. But Cœur de Pirate is very, very famous in Quebec. And it seemed, now, this is kind of an easy one for him in one way, because, and this might not be a very well known fact, but campaigns have theme songs. And Carney's theme song in English is Carry On by Cœur de Pirate. This is probably her biggest hit in English. Um, now, her version in French is not the theme song, because Carry On in French, the title is Oublie-moi, which literally translates to Forget Me. So probably not a good theme song. So he has another one in French. But Cœur de Pirate, uh, nominated for Junos, winner of Lord how knows how many Felix Awards Cœur de Pirate has won over the course of her career. And I mean, she's, we're talking about like way more than a 10-year career, right? And winning big prizes as big as like album of the year. She won that in 2012. So she's a multiple uh, Felix winner throughout her entire career. She's very, very well known. But then came the moment that could have sunk him, and somebody must have prepared him well for this, because the co-host asked him point blank, said, "Do you know the name of the comedy troupe that our host was a part of, the 5-member comedy troupe?" Now that one could be trickier, and Mark Carney nailed it. He mentioned it was Rocky Balzaret, and that gained an audible "ooh" from the audience, and even appreciation from the hosts. And that's pretty much the note on which his segment ended. That's a pretty good note to end it, especially after being peppered very quickly near the end about Bill 21, Bill 21, Bill 96. Like, it's like, what about this, which is important to Quebec culture? How about this about it that's important to Quebec culture? Do you even know Quebec culture? Like, name something, anything. And then when he was able to name that one thing, okay, you were able to name that one thing. What about this guy? So somebody in his team must have prepared him to let him know that this guy was on Rocky Balzaret. And Rocky Balzaret was big. It was uh, it was pre Rocky Balzaret was as big in Quebec as Kids in the Hall was in Canada. And for a similarly long time. Right? They had albums and everything, and they would do parody songs and stuff like that, became big hits on radio. So again, again, Guy Lepage has the specific distinction in Quebec of being someone that has been part of 2 TV shows that were big, 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 huge cultural moments in Quebec culture. So he's like I said, you cannot underestimate how big Tout le monde en parle is. So you have a situation with this, and unfortunately, I would like to show you clips. I would have loved to show you clips from Tout le monde en parle, but because it is not a news show specifically, it's more, like I said, it would be more like The Social or something like this on English, or The View. It's not specifically a news show, but it's current affairs. I'm not sure what the rights are on that. It's not a news broadcast, so I didn't want to get dinged by presenting segments. But we now have had situations twice where the leaders of the main parties have been on the same plateau, on the same stage, studio stage, for all intents and purposes, for the same show, though not on the same stage at the same time, in French. And both times, even though it can be by slimmer margins, Carney has come out on top over Poilièvre. So it's Carney 2, Poilièvre 0. in terms of appearing on French TV. And this is objectively speaking because, again, while both cannot excel given their language of French, given the specificity and the pointedness of the questions, the level of language used, the speed of speech, when you put it all together, Carney had a tougher interview, unlike Cinq Chefs une élection, left leaving a better impression, had no cringe moments, got through the very, very difficult questions in a way that did not trip him up, might be unsatisfying for some, but did not trip him up. And Poilièvre, with better ease in the language, still had a lower level of vocabulary overall, did have some awkward moments, didn't snag himself as well, did what he had to do. But when the interview was over, there was a question about the CBC, and Lepage did take the time to make a editorial comment near the end about the value of it. So it wasn't as cheerful an ending to the interview when he left. So when you add it all together, given that Carney had lower proficiency, but a much tougher interview, he did better. He exceeded expectations in that case. Now, again, exceeding expectations doesn't mean he nailed it. Right? Yes, but for reasonable expectations of what we could expect from him going into that type of den, he did better. He came out better. And he definitely did not do himself any damage, which also increases the pressure on Pierre and on Yves-François Blanchet to maybe try and score or land a big blow during the debate. And if they don't do it the right way, it could reflect poorly on them. And of the two, the chances of it backfiring will be greater on Blanchet than on Poilièvre, because Poilièvre fans probably would be okay watching him bash a liberal, right? That wouldn't matter so much to them. But the thing with the bloc, right, it's the level, the standard to which the party tries to hold itself, because at all times they're trying to show the population of Quebec how Quebec would be led if it was a nation, an independent sovereign nation on its own. In his role as Blanchet always has to remember that no matter what he says, wherever situation he is always the statesman. He always has to meet the statesmanship test, because that's the essence of the party. So if he loses a bit of mastery of himself, it will be more consequential for him than if Poilièvre does, because, well, first of all, everybody expects him to lose mastery of himself, right? Whereas it's not expected from Blanchet. From Blanchet, it would be completely out of character were it to happen, right? The expression goes, s'il s'emportait in French, if he carried on a little bit or got a little too sharp. So yeah, pretty good night, revealing. Like I said, this was one of the big tests, absolutely. The other thing I'd like to mention is when we're talking about language, when I talk about Carney using a more elevated language, there's two reasons. One, he learned a lot of his French probably more in Europe, right? Or at least got to use a lot of it in Europe, and had another level when he was at the Bank of England. Whereas Poilièvre's French on the show was more at the conversational level, which is not a bad thing for this particular show and this particular audience, right? But you'll see some comments there somewhere like, well, Poilièvre had the better vocabulary and whatnot. No, he did not. He did not. But Poilièvre had adjusted the tone of his vocabulary for the setting, which is a good move if you want to relate. Carney did not do that, but then again, Carney's a banker, so nobody expects him to not speak like a banker, right? So, but yes, Pierre was able to modulate. But if we're actually looking at the level of language, specifically vocabulary, Carney's is superior. Carney does tend to look for the precise and correct word, and but he's less able to speak familiarly than Pierre is. And so there are advantages and disadvantages to both. But in terms of level of vocabulary, Carney's is clearly superior. All right. I think that's everything I had of this one. Let's see where we are in time here, kids and cubs. I cannot. Okay, I need to watch. Okay, whoa, wow. We've done a lot on that already. Okay, well, you know what? I think this might be a good time then, kits and cubs, to end the show. But I will read a few comments here. Kit Linda M. So basically, it sounds like Carney was held to a much higher standard on the show. He met the moment, and Skippy skated by. Um, one could say that. I would say that Skippy had a slightly tougher test than simply skating by. Right. He was asked questions point blank and whatnot. But yeah, there wasn't so much uh, specific, like, this is a big deal in Quebec. What have you got here for Quebec? Right. As there was for Carney. And Carney was asked questions as if he is prime minister. Right now, he's liberal of the Leader Party, right, like this, but asked questions that one would be asked of a prime minister. And Poilièvre was really asked more questions as being a candidate. In fact, one of the questions they asked Carney, Carney made the point of saying in the interview that, of course, I prefer to be prime minister. It's much. I prefer to be prime minister. It's easier than being a candidate. But of course, we have to be a candidate, right? We all have to be a candidate. That's how you choose. And said that, of course, business, being in the private sector is easier than being in the public sector because, the daily scrutiny in the same way is not there. So he was pretty frank about those two things when it came to point blank, being asked about it point blank, but didn't make the point. It says, but you have to understand, it's like, this is an important moment, and that's why I'm here. It's like, yes, it's easier elsewhere, and I can get paid more elsewhere and whatnot, but this moment is happening now, and yeah, like this. So I stepped up. Okay. Oh, and yeah, he was also asked directly about the tax havens in Bermuda. So I mean, like, again, he was asked a lot of pointed, direct questions about allegations made against him. And with that one too, he did make the point of saying that the structures in Bermuda are completely legal and are structured in such a way that all the taxes are indeed paid in Canada, and mentioned that teachers and a whole bunch of other people, public servants, whatnot, were invested in there. He was also asked specifically, but as prime minister, would you be doing stuff to try to, take care of that, the leakage of tax dollars through, through those types of structures? And that's why he said, I want to distinguish this type of structure is structured in such a way so that the tax is paid in Canada, we don't lose any. He seemed to indicate some openness to be able to wanting to take action on the broader issue. But it didn't seem full-throated and whatnot. But there seemed to be, like, it wasn't a no, I'm ruling that out, but it wasn't like a yeah, I think that would be great as well. So again, that might be some place where some people might be unsatisfied with regards to Carney. But again, it's not an answer that will sink him in any way, shape, or form here. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here from. All right, there we go. Perfect. I'm just looking here. Kit PNC bio. It doesn't really matter. As I said, Mark Carney is leading in Quebec by more than he is leading in any other province. Taking apart his Quebec performance seems gratuitous. All right. There we go. That probably would probably would be. I don't think that gratuitous. I mean, there is the people of Quebec clearly have a lot of goodwill towards him, and that's probably based on the resume. But the rest of it is earned, right? And there has been noticeable improvement over the course of the campaign, right? And he is showing up in the venues, and he is being asked the tough questions, and he is taking them, and he's good-natured about it. It's scoring points. It's maybe not scoring big ones, right? But on the balance, it's just like one more little tick of the check. This is another box check mark. It's the consensus appears to believe that the French is good enough and it is clear. And it seems that they do like his resume. And what it is that he is able to communicate in French appears to be good enough to allow people to be convinced that they would be in good hands. The Bloc doesn't get down to 18 if there is not a quality candidate that Quebecers have judged to be quality. And again, Quebecers are rather discerning and very strategic voters. So they're not to be underestimated as a collective electorate, but also just as individual voters. They are very, very engaged, and they do understand. They understand quite a lot, and this is the province that has never, ever, ever really taken to conservatives. They saw through Harper, they saw through Scheer, they saw through O'Toole, they're seeing through Poilièvre, right? They are very, very, very savvy voters. Very savvy voters. All right. Kits and Cubs. I think that's the end for today. What do you think? I hope that you enjoyed this episode because we liked bringing it to you. Remember that sharing is caring and word of mouth is priceless. So please tell your peeps and poops all about us. We really, really appreciate it when you do. All right. Thanks so much. I'm going to go to the production suite over here and make sure that we get all of the little QR codes and stuff like that for you here for the next section. If you would like to support us, like for example, making sure that you do not miss a single episode in podcast format, well then, that QR code that just appeared is the one that you need to scan. It brings you to our pod page, podpage.com/the True North Eager Beaver. You go there and you scan, if you go there, sorry, if you can't scan it, and click on subscribe. When we have something fresh off the bandwidth, it comes directly to you. We make sure that you get every one of our shows and that you don't have to go looking for it because we like to help and make it easy. So thank you so much for subscribing. We really appreciate it. And thank you once again to the Ray Girl for being a very, 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 very appreciated sponsor. Thank you so much. Now, kids and cubs, if you would like to help us in other ways, well, hey, why not join the Damn Fam and become a member of the True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated YouTube channel. There we have 3 buttons: like, share, and the important one, subscribe. We had hit 18,000 over the course of the weekend, but I think we lost a few because it says 17,900 again. But if you would like to help us get back over 18,000, please go over there and click subscribe. And while you're there, like and share as well. That helps us out so much, and we appreciate that as well. Thank you. If you would like to help us in yet another way, because we do incur some costs in order to bring this show to you. So if you do like our product, you appreciate what we do, and you would like to encourage us to do more, well, we do have a way for you to do that. And that is the Eager Beaver Lodge Emergency Hydration Fund, or other words, our tip jar, right? If you scan that QR code that just appeared, or go to coffee, that's spelled coffee, ko-fi.com/eagerbeaver, all in one word. If you drop a little coinage in there, well, first of all, not only do you make sure that you keep your beaver moist, very important, delicious, but you also make sure that we are able to keep on bringing this show to you. We have subscription costs and internet fees and whatnot. So, we throw a little bit into this, and every little bit helps. Now, we understand that times are tight and people are concerned about money. So, if you are not able to help at this time, please do not worry, because the gift of your attention and participation are the gifts that matter the most to us. And we are very, very grateful for them. We love to hear from you. So, please, if you have the time and have the inclination, write to us, please, at truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com. And there, you can tell us what you think of the show, good, bad, or ugly. If ugly, please, please, please be gentle, because we are delicate creatures. But we do read everything that you send us, even though we're not able to get back to everyone. And we do want you to know that your compliments and comments and constructive criticism all do go back into the show and help us make it better. And we are grateful for all that you do to help make us better. Now, truenortheagerbeaver at gmail.com, by the way, is also where you can send a direct donation to us if you would rather avoid the CE Tech bros and not support the PayPal stuff. And make sure that your transaction is 100% Canadian. We get 100% of it as well. So that's a bonus. It's win-win-win. All right. Now, if you would like to write to us and chat with us in other ways, well, we do have our socials at True Eager at the Blue Sky Beaver Lodge, and also at The Bad Place on Jitter. Also, True North Eager Beaver on YouTube and on Facebook, our original home. And if you happen to be listening on YouTube here with Damn Fam or later on, just leave a comment right here on our section down below. And yes, as we mentioned before, we do read everything, even though we're not able to get back to all of you. And it touches us very much when you leave us some very kind compliments. There have been a few lately, so there have been lots of warm fuzzies in my little beaver heart. So thank you so very much for all that you do with regard to that. All right, kits and cubs. Because democracy is something that you do, remember Quebec Liberal leadership race. Those results will be announced in June. The Manitoba Progressive Conservative race. Again, your mail in ballots have to be in by April 22nd if you got them. So please make sure those are in. And the April 26th results will be announced. And of course, for the federal election, we are getting ready for the opening of advanced polls coming this weekend. So, for those of you who haven't already gone to your returning office to vote early, well, you can definitely make sure that you go to vote early if you might be busy on election day. So, advanced polling stations are open for 4 days from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So, they will be open on Easter Sunday. The other day, I think I did a show and I wasn't sure as to whether or not that was the case. But they will be open April 18th to 21st, including Easter Sunday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Please check your voter information card or use the voter information service to find your polling station. Voter information service is available at electionscanada.ca. It's just a link. You enter a little bit of information and probably, I think maybe just your postal code is all that's needed, I think. And it will tell you where your polling station is. So if you're wondering if you haven't received your card, that's the good way. Remember, you do not need your voting ID card to vote. All you need is 2 pieces of ID, and you need them anyway. But you need something, a government-issued piece of ID that has your name, and then you need something official that has your address. Now, if it has both, like a driver's license, that's great. But if you're using, for example, a health card or an identity card, then something, for example, like a bill that come to your house, official letter, with your name on it that shows that you are a resident at that address, or your copy of your lease or something of like that. But all you need is those 2 pieces of information, one that proves your name, one that proves your address, and that you reside where you do, and then you can come over there and vote. And if you're new, particularly if you have moved to a new neighborhood since last year, since the last tax filing period, you might want to take a look to see if you are registered and make sure. So to see if that followed you. That will let you know if you're not to bring that information with you to the polling station. But if you have moved to someplace in the last year, it's probably best to bring that with you just in case. You are able to vote. Don't worry about that. It's just that they need to get you on the voter roll, and you'll need that information for them to put you on it. And then everything will be fine. All right? Now let's see, what do we have? And so right now, April 14th to 19th, if you are a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, you can vote at the military poll that is set up for your base or unit. That starts today. Okay, in terms of early voting. If you are a university student, vote on campus started yesterday, April 13th, and goes to the 16th. It's offered for 4 days, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Check the list of participating campuses at elections.ca under the How to Vote tab to find the one that is nearest you. And let's see, what do we have? On April 16th, that's in 2 days, incarcerated electors will be able to vote at the place where they are serving their sentences. And it seems that there's a lot of people in Canada that seem to be surprised by the fact that incarcerated populations can vote. Yes, they can. We are not the United States. In the United States, felons lose their right to vote. But in Canada, we consider basic fundamental human rights to be inalienable human rights, which means they cannot be taken away. And because you are an incarcerated person does not mean you are no longer human or no longer have rights or no longer have a say in what your government decides, particularly if you are incarcerated, because the government isn't directly making decisions that affect your life. So, yes, incarcerated people have the right to vote. And in Canada, it is not abnormal in any way, shape, or form. All right? It's what we do. You don't stop being human because you're in jail. So you still have human rights. It's really that simple. All right. So this is information that you need to know. And again, if you're looking to vote earlier than that, before April 22nd, on your voter ID card, on the right-hand bottom corner, that will tell you where your returning office is, and that's where you can go and you can vote there anytime when it's open until the 22nd, I believe so. Okay, so that's all the information that you need to vote. Words of wisdom, kits and cubs. Huh. You know what? I'm, to be totally honest, I'm a little low on wisdom today. uh, if you got any out there, please top me up. Um, let's see, wisdom. You know what? I think I'm just gonna keep it light today, kids and cubs. If you have the opportunity to do a little something, to just give a little burst of joy, a little pop of color to your life, treat yourself. You're worth it. Be good to yourself today, right? And I guess that ties in with my general advice to be kind to and gentle with yourself today. But you know what? You might just deserve a little extra today. Why not? If not you, who? Right? Okay. Let's see. That's everything. So I guess I need to do the thing where I basically ask myself to cue the cock. So there we go. You are listening to a True North Eager Beaver Media Incorporated podcast. The True North Eager Beaver podcasts are proudly brought to you by our founding sponsors, the Misfit Mysteries from Corvid Moon Publishing, your source for science fiction, fantasy, and cozy mysteries featuring a broad diversity of characters. CanadianTarot.com, their uniquely Canadian online eclectic tarot community, and The Peppermaster, hot pepper sauces made from farm-fresh ingredients to thrill your taste buds and expand your mind. We are grateful to the Crier Media Network for its support, Pete Jarvis for our artwork, and Paul Joseph Something for our opening and closing sequence music. There you are, kids and cubs. A little bit of Canadians who make us proud before we go. At the World Women Hockey Championships, unfortunately, Canada did suffer its first loss last night. It was the big match in pool play against the United States, which ended up in a 2-1 loss, unfortunately, for Team Canada. But hey, that's it's not the end yet. It's not the end yet. Far from it. No need to panic yet. It's just a warm up. So they are in second place now in Group A, behind the United States that has a perfect record. Canada with 6 points, still going very well here. And we have in the Group B, Sweden topping the pool there, with Germany actually being in the second place. For looking at the teams, Group A seems to be quite more um, heavy, with US, Canada, and Finland all in the same group. Often USA, Canada, and Finland finish one, two, three, not necessarily in that order. So to have them all in the same qualifying group, along with Czech Republic and Switzerland, which are no slouches, yeah, that's a tough pool. Group B has Sweden, Germany, Japan, Norway, and Hungary. So yeah, there will be, of course, more matches over, since we're all in pool play. Let's see, they have 3 matches left, so they have one left. The next match will be on the 13th, so I'm guessing that's today, against the Czech Republic, and so we'll be cheering on Team Canada there as well. Over the course of the weekend, Kits and Cubs as well, was the Billie Jean King Cup competition in tennis for to try to qualify for the world group. Unfortunately, Kits and Cubs Team Canada did not manage to do so, while Team Canada did defeat Romania in the first part of the pool play. They did not, unfortunately, defeat Japan in the second one. And so Japan finished with a 2-0 record in the pool and get to advance, and Canada does not. However, Victoria Mboko, who we have been talking about a lot on our show, had a great tournament, defeating Elena Shibahara, who's ranked 135th in the world, and winning her previous match as well. So Mboko was the only person from a singles player from Team Canada to win both matches on the weekend. And she is now at 157 in the world. She started the year at 333, I believe. And if she keeps climbing like that, she might be a top 100 player before the year is out. So again, keep your eye on her. Victoria Mboko, doing great things for Team Canada. So, yeah, unless something terrible happens and the team needs to drop out and Canada gets a lucky loser call up, that's the end of Team Canada's run for the Billie Jean King Cup this year already, which is kind of sad, fortunately, because we were champions just a few years ago. But again, a lot of this depends on who's available on any given date to go to these matches. And this time, unfortunately, the team fell short. But it was an extremely good effort, because the team this year was mostly comprised of the next gen, and to defeat Romania and to perform that well against Japan, which was a more established team at this level. They sent a team that's a more established. Shibahara is one of the world's. She's 135 in singles, but one of the world's premier doubles players in particular, along with her partner, who's also from Japan. So they had the doubles locked up for sure in this matchup with Team Canada, and just had to make sure they did well enough on the singles to bring it home, and they did indeed. Um, so, but hey, there's always next year, right? All right, Kits and Cubs, that's all I got for you today. Hope that all of you have a most beaverific weekend, and we'll see you tomorrow. Debates are coming up. It's about to get juicy. Bye.